The best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Sal Di Stefano is my guest. So many of our ideas, from men to women, really over the last 50 years, have really influenced how this gender dysphoric crisis has occurred. This idea that I'm never enough, I'm dissatisfied, I'm disassociating with my body. But I want to hone in a little bit on women, because I know you've worked a lot with women in the fitness world. I have as well, from Pilates to dance, teaching dance and dancing. And I would love to hear your thoughts on what do you think the biggest need is, that biggest change that needs to happen to prevent the body image crisis for women?
Oh boy, I think we need to repackage how we deliver fitness. I like to talk a lot about strength. I like to talk about muscle and performance. And I also like to talk about how the scale lies to us, right? When you weigh yourself, you're weighing body mass, but not body composition. And I like to communicate that because I found that when women focus on strength, when they focus on building muscle, and you have to sell it effectively, you have to communicate to them that you'll look better, you'll have the body that you want, it speeds up your metabolism. I think if you sell it properly, they start to understand, they start to move in a different direction. But ultimately, it boils down to this. We have to learn how to care for ourselves like somebody who deserves to be cared for. I think if you understand that, you start eating in a way that is more appropriate and you start exercising in a way that's appropriate. Notice I use the word appropriate because a lot of us go to the gym to beat ourselves up. It's really cathartic to punish ourselves because, we look in the mirror and we think we look gross or fat or whatever. And so, we walk out of the gym, feel like we're going to throw up, and we say, what a great workout. That's a punishment. And then when we try to change our diet, it's more of a takeaway or a restriction. Somebody offers you something to eat and you say, no, I can't have that. I'm on a diet. We need to move to caring for ourselves, because then it becomes I want that or I don't want it. And then exercise becomes self-care. It becomes self-care. And if you start from that place, then you start to move in the right direction. But if you start from a place of self-hate, if you start from a place of I'm inadequate, I'm unattractive, I'm not, I'm fat, I'm skinny, I'm whatever, then you're never going to develop a relationship with exercise. That's one that you're going to want to maintain. It's an abusive relationship. And at some point, you'll escape the abuse, and that means you'll stop working out. And at some point, you'll escape the abuse with your diet. And what that looks like is rebellion. So you don't go off the diet a little bit, you go way off the diet, type of deal. But it has to start from that place right there. I think social media has really fueled this challenge to such a crazy degree. I think you have to be very mindful of how you organize your algorithm, because if you're on social media and your algorithm is filled with, bodies that are, look, this is a real statistic. There are more millionaires in America than there are people with six-pack abs, okay? If you go into a gym, any gym, this is a self-selection bias of fit people, okay? It's rare to see a six-pack of abs in the gym. Yet on social media, you think everybody was shredded. You think everybody looked perfect. And so what ends up happening is your brain perceives this as your environment, and it ranks you very low. It's really no different than if I, always lived in the NBA. I'm 6 foot tall. I'm a tall guy in the real world. But if I lived in the NBA, I'd feel like the smallest person of all time. And so you got to change the algorithm on your social media by consciously not commenting, not hovering, and literally letting the social media app know, I want to see less of this and more of this. Otherwise, it's going to fuel this spiral of body dysmorphia. By the way, you see this in, they call it perception drift in plastic surgery, where somebody gets a procedure, then they get another procedure, then they get another procedure, because their perception of how they look starts to shift. It's subjective. I'll give you another example, Timmerie. I know people have experienced this before, when they think they're so out of shape and they think I don't look good. And then 10 years later, they see a picture of themselves from 10 years ago and they go, I can't believe I thought I was fat. I look so good. Yes. And so it just goes to show you just how much we lie to ourselves. So you got to start from a place of self-care. You need to organize your life in a way that promotes health, because if you just let the world organize it for you, it's not a healthy default. The default of the world is poor health. So avoid heavily processed foods, change your algorithm, live a little differently. This is true for spiritual health as well. You can't live like the world or you'll be spiritually ill. But it has to start from self-care. It has to. Otherwise, it's going to be an on-off again relationship for the rest of your life.
I love that accountability with rephrasing the language of how we're communicating about muscle and strength versus looks oriented, but then also the tech side, Sal, because just the algorithms, you're saying change your algorithms, and someone goes, how do I do that? You're saying it. Don't hover, don't like, don't comment on these things that are going to fuel that comparison culture, that feeling of never being enough, or sometimes just looking, that's a filter on there. That's not actually real. And I think that these things are so important to say to ourselves of, hey, I don't need to look at this, and having that out loud conversation if necessary to help kind of navigate what has really led to this comparison and disassociation, and just again that feeling of I'm not enough. I look at the story of Ollie London, who's been a guest here on the show, and he came from London, very handsome young man, and next thing you know, he has over 100 and something plastic surgeries to try and look like this pop sensation from Korea. And then it turns into it's still not enough, one after another, and then it eventually turns into him identifying and getting ready to go through with surgery to look like a woman. And praise God, he walked into a Catholic church and it saved his life and his soul. But we need to have these conversations about navigating media and navigating language around how we look at fitness. So that's Sal Di Stefano. You can join me and listen on the Relevant Radio app to Trending with Timmerie live each weekday at 6 p.m. Central. Thanks for listening.